Lines have their own properties and a way of behaving inside of Marvelous Designer. I'll begin by showing some of the features when we used to create those lines. The standard way of doing things is to simply select the polygonal tool or just polygon tool and click, and that's how we create shapes. But there are some other things that can happen if we change the way we click. So for example, if I click and then I hold Control on the keyboard, I get to create a curve point. This is not a segment point, as you can see the different color that indicates that this is a curvature point. So if I keep on holding Control, I can create those kind of shapes without adding any new segment points. If, on the other hand, I simply click and hold, I get to create a segment point, but it's a Bezier point, which is identified by the blue handle on the point, as you can see. So if I close the shape and I go into the Edit Pattern tool, those points, the Bezier points, they're actual physical points on the curvature on the segment, but everything that was added using Control curvature points, we can't really see them unless we go into Edit Curve. So it's a combination of things when we make our patterns, and this also works with symmetry. If we click and we add things, and as we add things, we can simply press right click, and there is an option called mirror creation. So once we click that, we get to choose the axis that the symmetry is going to align to. And another thing to mention is if you're not happy with the line, instead of pressing escape on the keyboard to remove the whole curve and then start again, we can simply press backspace, and backspace deletes the last point that was created on the canvas. So we can go as far as we want using this little hotkey. You're probably familiar with offset as internal line feature, which is right here, which is very much self-explanatory. It creates the program creates a line that is offset of the segment that we've selected. But I would like to talk about the other feature, which can be quite powerful, not for more or less standard ways of using it. So the feature I'm talking about is called offset as internal line along curve. For this feature to work, we need to select two segments. If we select those two, and I press the command, we get this window that has a lot of options. And if we use this little tool to connect the segments, we simply need to define the position of the line that we want to create, which in this case it could be found here. It's perpendicular direction. But I'm going to explain this tool having something a little bit more complex than simple parallel lines. So I will create an internal shape using the Control to create something that has a curvature, and then I will select those two segments. As you can see, it doesn't matter whether it's outside segment or it's an internal shape. This feature works on everything. So if I click here again, so what we have here is a way to create patterns in many cases, because this allows us to add as many lines as we want, and the distance between them is going to be equal. But there are some some features to define this, to modify this. That we can play with the distance, we can play with offset, and all of those things. And as you can probably see, simply by looking at what I have, this this curvature and the straight line, that we're already having some kind of pattern. And so I use this feature pretty much solely for this function. I don't use this to connect the segments as much as I use it to create something that that I have in mind in terms of a design. But to continue with the explanation of this window, another thing that we can do here is we can reverse the direction, which is again quite self-explanatory. This one is different, opposite segment. I'm going to illustrate it by clicking the perpendicular direction, which is which sets the direction to be perpendicular to the segments that we've selected instead of it being parallel to the segment. So if I click here, the direction changes. And so this opposite segment works this way. It looks at the number that is set in here in distance to segment edge, and this is where this number is located. So if I press opposite segment, what Marvelous does is it sets this number on the other curvature, on the other segment. So in this case, this is the this is where the number is, and this is where the line will begin. So if I have something more drastic than this, not the best example, but I hope you get the idea. It takes this number, and then it uses different segments to start this line from. And the last thing that we have here is straight line. I'm going to explain it by having those two segments connected. So if I click perpendicular, if I use perpendicular direction, this is what happens. The program tries to create the most efficient, the most optimized line that connects those two segments. The angle is very different. That's why we have this kind of situation. So if what we want is we want to connect those segments without this this calculation taking place, we simply need to click this this box, and what happens now is that everything is straight. To illustrate this a little bit further, I'm going to create another internal shapes, and I want you to see what can be done using this tool in terms of design, in terms of creating some kind of interesting patterns. So if I click, I've set as a long curved. If I click perpendicular, there are all kinds of things that that can happen depending on the segments that we select. So it's it has to be a very clear and specific pattern or specific design that that could work. But I hope you get the idea that it's a tool that is not simply used to connect things. It's a tool that can be used to create interesting patterns, something unique.
If you enjoy this content or find it useful, please consider supporting me by buying me a cup of coffee via the link in the description.
Another tool to mention is create perpendicular lines. If we click on a segment, we get to choose from this add perpendicular internal line, we get to choose the axis. To really go through them, if we click X axis, we get this window where what happens is the line stays perpendicular to the x-axis, and the x-axis is horizontal one. The point is going to move along the curve, but the line itself is always going to stay perpendicular, which is quite handy. And y is going to be in this way. It's going to be perpendicular to the vertical line, which is the y-axis. And the more interesting one is the local. And the local, as you can imagine, it stays perpendicular to the segment itself that we selected. So it's another one of those ways to connect things that require precision. And inside of this window, we can change things. Even though we clicked perpendicular, we can modify the angle itself in here. But it's if we are creating a perpendicular line, it's best to keep it as 90 degrees, and both means that the direction of the lines is going to simply be mirrored. And the thing about this feature is that we get to see that those lines are perpendicular by having this mathematical sign indicating that there is 90 degrees between those segments. This feature also works on points. So if we click on one of the points, in this case it's going to be this one, we can actually create a perpendicular line coming from this point. Again, we get to choose x, y, and local axis. And if I choose local, the window is slightly different because it's a point and not a line. There is no way for us to modify the position of where the line is going to start. But there's another option which is called refer to opposite segment, and what it means is that this will tell the program which segment to use. And since it's a point that has only two segments, if we click here, now this is going to be the segment that the line is going to be perpendicular to. If I untick this is going to be the segment from where the line is going to go perpendicular to it. Just like with points, we can isolate some lines that we want to work on individually. So I'm going to use this as an example. And let's say we want to work on this line only. We want it to be separate from those two other segments. If I move this line right now, it affects both of those. And if I click on the point, there's an option to divide internal point, meaning that this point is going to be split. But this same feature can be used on a line. So if I click divide internal line, you can see that the points indicate different color, which means that they are no longer connected, that there are 2 points inside of them, or multiple points inside of them. And so now I can do basically whatever I want with just this one line. One of the best features inside of Marvelous Designer when it comes to efficiency is feature dedicated specifically for open-ended lines like this one. So in a situation where you have lines not connected to segments, they could be like this, they could be like it was before. Or for example, if we created some internal lines and they simply do not connect to the segments, what we can do for them to match, if we want them to go all the way to the opposite segments, and as you can see here, there's a difference, so we can either move those things manually and individually to match the points to the segments. But the option that I'm talking about is called extend or trim to pattern outline. And if we click this option, the points automatically snap to the opposite segments. So this is really useful when something like this, for example, happens, where you've created a shape and there was some kind of pattern, and the points no longer connect to the curvature. So instead of going here manually connecting those things, again, we simply need to select the lines and then click extend and trim, and this happens really fast and it happens perfectly. And it's one of those features that is really useful when there are some kind of situations like this, when you might not notice that the lines are not completely connected, and there might be some kind of strange artifacts on the model, on the clothing during the simulation, and all of those things. And if we're creating some kind of patterns, again using the offset as internal line, and the segments simply do not connect to the segments, so it's a very powerful one. The other option that is very similar, right underneath this one, is called trim and add point to pattern outline. And what it does, it connects the points to the segments like before, but this time around it creates a segment point on the segment. So this could also be very helpful, very useful, because this way we can work on individual seams like that. Another kind of a line to talk about is called baseline, and what it does is this line works as a guide. So let me illustrate what I mean by that. If we select this curvature and right click it, there's an option called convert to baseline. If we press that, the segment is no longer there. Instead, there is a blue line, and we can't really do anything about it. We can't select it. We can't move anything. But if we were to select some points, those points will snap to this line automatically. So think about this, the baseline as a guide. This is something that you can use if you want to snap some patterns. You want to snap some segments, and you wanted to do it in a specific and precise manner. And the reason to use baseline instead of just a simple curvature or internal shape like it was before is that baseline doesn't leave any mark on the geometry itself. So if this was a curvature, or if this was internal shape, if we were to simulate this on the clothing, we would see indication that there is some kind of seam going on the model. And baseline works just as a guide. It doesn't leave anything. It leaves the surface of the model completely intact and unchanged. Baselines are certainly helpful, but sometimes we might not want to have them on our garments. Sometimes they simply clutter the space, and it's not a pretty picture. One thing where baselines are created automatically is when we merge things together. So for example, if I merge those two garments, we get to see those two baselines. This is very helpful. Sometimes there might be a case where we merged something and then we worked on this piece individually, and we wanted to get back. We wanted to actually split those lines, split those garments, to bring them back to the original state that we wanted, with the seam between them. Because the baselines were created for us, we can revert to this state by simply using the trace tool. Baselines use with the trace tool. You cannot select them by using anything else. Only the trace tool can actually do something with the baselines. So if we wanted to get back to those original patterns, we simply need to trace those lines and then press trace as pattern, and then we can do the same with the other side, and that's how we get our patterns and garments back. As I said, trace tool is the only one that can be used on those on the baselines. And so if there was a case where those baselines are no longer needed, or if they were created automatically and they can be quite misshaped, they can be quite random sometimes, especially when some modifications were done. To delete them, to get them out of the way, is to use the trace tool. So with the trace, we simply click on the line and press delete. And the last thing to mention is the line length inside of Property Editor. So for example, in a case like this, when there's a garment that connects to several other pieces, we need to make sure that the length of the line that we connect with other garments is the same. So in this case, if this is the line that I want to connect to other garments, this is the number. This is what it says on the segment itself. This is the same number that is given here inside of Property Editor, and it's under 2D line length. And Marvelous also gives us automatically the symmetrical line length if we have symmetry on those pieces, and we do. This is a symmetrical piece of clothing. So if I want to make sure that the length of the lines combined on other garments is the same, I simply need to select those lines, those garments, where the seams are going to be, and in here Marvelous automatically gives us the number. It's the sum of those segments selected, and as you can see, there's a difference. Those three combined, they are 10 millimeters shorter than what I have here. So if I want to make sure that everything works nicely, that there are no extra fabric and no extra folding and no extra wrinkles, I simply need to change the length of this line to match the sum of those three. And the thing to mention about the length of the lines in here inside the Property Editor is not just the usability of this feature that allows us to see the length of the lines by simply selecting those other segments. There's another option that is called 3D line length, and this length is not what we see in here. This is the length of the lines that are in here. And so if there's a lot of gravity, and there is some kind of pressure added to the garments, and the preset itself is unique, and every preset is unique. So depending on all of those modifications that happen during the simulation and after the simulation, this number is going to indicate this length. Is going to indicate the length of the line after all of those forces have been applied to the garments. So do not confuse those two. If we need to create precision when it comes to garments, 2D line length is the one that we need to look for, and 3D line length is what happens when all the simulation is put on top of those garments.